What's the most NSFW thing you've seen happen in a workplace? Once I walked in on one of my patients having sex with her boyfriend. She had given birth, really, 6 hours earlier. No. A male client jumped on me and started licking me everywhere. I work at a vet though, so it's okay. Edit. Nice. I worked in a cemetery for years. I remember one of the funeral directors was banging a receptionist, and one night she met him out in the war crypts and the security guard caught them with my homie's pants down. NSFW and hilarious. Side note, he was engaged to somebody else who worked there. The fireworks were legendary. Edit. Thanks for the silver. Worked in an emergency room. And I can tell you that a good number of the nurses and paramedics were having affairs and just having rampant sex with each other. I remember one specific time walking by a patient room and just hearing sex sounds. A few minutes later, a disheveled nurse and firefighter came strolling back to the nurse's station. A different type of NSFW. One of the physicians was busted for having alcohol in his big gulp while working. Another time we discovered one nurse in the bathroom half passed out with a needle in her arm. County hospitals are awesome. Worked at a place that had a boardroom that overlooked the factory. The boardroom windows were covered in mirror vinyl, and usually it's brighter in the factory than the boardroom, so you can't see in from the factory. After work it's getting dark, so the lights in the boardroom are brighter than the factory, so the effect is reversed and you can see everything in the boardroom from the factory but can't see the factory from inside the boardroom. That's when the CEO walks into the boardroom and ducks a receptionist on the boardroom table with a whole bunch of factory workers watching. A well-qualified female was promoted to be a line supervisor at a manufacturing facility I worked at years ago. One of the men on the line was rather upset that he'd have to be reporting to a woman. When the newly promoted line supervisor was making her first review inspection of the line, he dropped his pants and underpants and waved his dieter in defiance. Her first administrative act as supervisor was to terminate his employment. We had a row of 10 or so porta potties that started swaying uncontrollably. Turns out a couple decided that a porta potty is a discreet place to hook up. Walked in on my boss boning the HR director in his office. My next review and raise were the best I ever had. Guy took a rid from a 100 feet lattice tower. When you hear laying hot asphalt from a lineman, you scatter lol. We caught a 60-year-old rich, married, white lady blowing a homeless guy in our bathroom during Fantasy Fest while her husband waited outside. In her defense, I don't think she knew he was homeless. Friend was a plumber. He was installing a water heater in the roof with his assistant. He was in the roof and the assistant was fetching him tools and passing them up the ladder. After a while he asked his assistant for something and realized he wasn't there. So he climbed down the ladder to see where he was. Found him ducking the homeowner's maid on the kitchen table. They'd just met about 1 hour earlier. I walked in on 2 co-workers having sex. The guy just said, "Hey, what's up?" like it was nothing. Sadly it didn't work out for them. He pulled a gun on her in the parking lot a few months later. Honorable mention to the time I caught an employee getting fingered by a customer in a stairwell. I'm a teacher and one day walking past the headmaster office I heard some very distinctive moans. A guy was watching porn on his laptop during anti-sexual harassment training. A woman I worked with could be a little restless. We worked evenings and were relatively unsupervised. She occasionally would do exercises to burn off energy. She did a handstand against the wall once and her titty popped out. I don't think she knew I saw, but I saw your titty D. A bonding day for the entire production staff. It's basically 6 hours at a hotel with access to the pool, gym, sports fields and a few organized activities that are aimed to raise morale. Now you're not supposed to bring alcohol. In fact it's technically forbidden. But as long as you're not a complete moron, the management look the other way. Walk into a toilet to see 1 woman and 3 guys going at it. It was definitely consensual. I wasn't the first to see it and wasn't the last. Too drunk to realize that they should probably lock the door at least. Management looked the other way. I worked at a Nissan dealership located at a busy intersection in my city back in the early 2000s. One of the younger car salesmen was trying to sell a new car to a woman who looked to be in her 40s. It was going well. They were working on closing the deal. So I take a break and walk to the back car lot for a smoke to find the salesman wedged between two cars amongst a row of cars with the woman he was selling a car to on her knees giving him a blowjob. I was in complete shock. She never stopped and he just smiled and gave me a thumbs up. I am a 36-year-old female and still think of this one often enough. Ugh. At my gym, a hired trainer ran out of the bathroom butt naked, D in hand stroking and screaming at the top of his lungs. He blew the most ridiculous sized load I've ever seen on the preacher curl machine, then fell over and passed out. The police and paramedics had to be called and after they took the guy and did what they needed to do with the scene, the gym manager had to clean up the massive load off the machine. No, I skipped my class and just hung out there because I wanted to see how it all played out. One of my co-workers loved to wear miniskirts and go commando. I know this because our cubicle desks didn't have vanity panels, and her desk faced mine across an aisle. I didn't spend my time trying to look, mind you, but when she got on her hands and knees one day to check the wiring on her PC, it was hard not to notice. She was also either a natural redhead, or very thorough. Chick I worked with showed us her boobs. That was pretty nice of her. I worked in a crusty movie theater when I was an innocent 16-year-old. Here is a summary of it I saw people my age doing. Storing liquor bottles in the ice chest. Snorting painkillers off the sink. Dipping balls or spitting in the popcorn. Workers having sex in theaters closets parking lot. Cleaners popping ecstasy before their shift. Smoking weed behind the dumpster. Manager selling drugs for employees to do on their shift. Employee parties held in our 25-year-old manager's trailer. He supplied the alcohol for all the high schoolers. Cans of graffiti remover next to popcorn bags lying around the back. It was common for them to be taken out and huffed. Edit. Added 2 more examples. I was at my old job and I went to the bathroom. I open a stall, and the toilet is literally filled with blood. But you see, the kicker is I was in the men's bathroom. Small company. Had this woman in her 30s working in accounting. Not very attractive. Heavy smoker with a voice to match. A bit trashy, but she was funny, friendly and generally a good person. She found some photos of me online, which I guess she liked. She showed them to the co-workers, I guess for its and giggles. I walk in. She shows me a printout of one of the photos. The HR lady is standing right next. The unattractive woman says very loudly to me, "Let's have a six." HR lady's eyes go, "Oh circumflexigravodiaresis a ring, oh circumflexigravodiaresis." Then oh acute, acute, oh acute, acute. Then she just shook her head and walked away defeated. I laughed it off. Didn't have a six with her. People handling asbestos without any of the necessary safety equipment, from cleaning up a burnt out building. Work in a kitchen that is connected to a bar. 2 customers once started going at it in the ladies' room stall. Kicker, the stall was locked shut so they had to crawl under it to get inside. Crawling on the bathroom floor instead of going to the car. That's devotion. The HR woman at an old job I worked once cornered me to tell me all about her 14-year-old's D. How big it is, and how many times it's been within kissing distance of her mouth. She was telling this story very, very fondly. Turns out I'm not the only one she told and she ended up fired a few days later. All locks needed to be changed at the office and we had armed security patrolling outside for a little bit because apparently the husband was a little crazy too. I guess I heard that instead of saw it, though. This co-worker was really into me, I just didn't like her like that, but I guess she got desperate so she goes to where I'm working in the building and she literally just flashes her tits in front of me in the middle of the day and walks away. Till I have a boring but safe workplace. The head chef brought a big duck-off bag of magic mushrooms, we're talking large grocery bag here, and handed them out to all the staff. He had cancer and he was good friends with the owner and did not give a single duck. That was a magical night for staff and probably downright surreal for the diners. I used to work in one of the largest leather stores in the world, the kind that sells sex toys. 2. The sales floor staff frequently had sex with customers in the dressing rooms, and occasionally on the sales floor. It was encouraged by management. We had a male call center manager that was banging girls in exchange for better schedules. This was happening on an empty floor's bathroom in our building. During the same couple of years, The male sales manager was banging dudes in the same bathroom. I still wonder if they had any scheduling conflicts. Worked at a computer store. We had a repair section. Someone had a computer that kept randomly shutting down. The tech went to turn it on to test and the entire thing caught on fire. Turns out the guy had no heatsink. Had never cleaned out the inside of dust. Plus the oil that got inside and the case was covered in cooking oil. IDK how it ended up in this state, but we had to close the repair section for a few hours while they assessed the damage. No other computers were harmed, but the repair desk needed to be replaced as well as half the wires. I work in a kitchen. So do you mean today? Maybe the gallon of olive oil that spilled behind the line during the rush. Not safe at all. Or do you mean that time I caught a dishy having a little hand-to-gland combat in the walk-in? I saw an employee holding hands with her co-worker at a Subway. Multiple ton motor being held up diagonally on a forklift with two dudes standing on the back of the forklift for enough counterweight dart and one guy installing some bits underneath the motor that were mounts or whatever. Lol. Nope. I did go stand on the back of the lift though. Figured it might help. I manage a pizza and wing place. Super Bowls we rent a refrigerated semi-trailer to store backup food. This last Super Bowl came and went and the company never came back to get the trailer. So a few of my employees decided to hotbox the entire trailer. When they got out it looked like it was on fire from how much smoke was pouring out of it. Went to go get a job at Lay's warehouse. When I walked in I saw the manager in his underwear doing some NSFW things and left. Let's just say I choose not to work there or eat Lay's chips again. Worked in telemarketing. Saw way too much. People rolling blunts. Snorting lines. One guy whipped his D out. Did the helicopter dance and then acted confused when he was fired. The worst had to be the 60-plus-year-old lady getting caught jerking off her 60-plus-year-old cubicle mate. I work from home, so lots of masturbation. Smoking weed in a walk-in freezer. Girl got flowers on Valentine's Day. Some guys decide they need sunlight, so one dangles the other out by his ankles. From the second floor by English terms. So ground more than first, more than second. To place the flowers on a ledge outside the window. Genuinely mystified that no one was injured. I worked at an Italian restaurant pizza place that was across the road from some cheap motels. Cheap motels were where tricks were turned. We found out the hard way that one of our pizza chefs was paying for pussy and blowjobs with pizzas. Lol. I'd see him slip the girl a pizza through the window. Then he'd disappear for 20 minutes. I only walked in on them in the act once. And it was enough for me. I'm probably late to this one, but I used to work at a fairly upscale hotel. No way am I saying which one. The owners were a movie star and a politician. This was a great big estate type building that had 25 rooms. So anyway, one of the owners, guess which, was a little bit crazy. She would do things that aren't exactly legal or to achieve a visual aesthetic or give it what she called the location's flair. Anyway, the most NSFW thing I saw happen, there was a party for all of her rich friends. Except it was not a normal party. It was a six party. The entire hotel was blocked off for 2 days. Now they also had workers carrying drinks and food on trays, and the owner originally approached us on shift workers to try and get us to do that. Except we also had to be topless, including the women. So we all said duck off and they had to hire externally for that event. Anyway, not being there physically for the party, I only heard what I can imagine was the boink of a century for the venue. So at this point, you may be asking what's so NSFW about an owner using a venue for her own reasons? Basically, cleanup was very poor. There was a stench of sweat, piss and lube in many rooms which persisted for days. A couple of weeks after the party apparently, a family staying in a room found a used condom in a toy chest with kids' toys in the room. They got a colossal compensation package for that one. So that's my NSFW work story. I have probably many more about not enough first aid kits and ignored safety procedures. But you people on Reddit only want the juicy stuff. TLDR. Upscale hotel becomes owner's privatisix party venue for 2 days. Cleanup bad. Kid finds a used condom. Lorem ipsum dolocit amet. Consectita adipissing elit. Sed duius mad temper incident at labor et dolor magna reliqua. Attenium ad minim veniam. Quis nostrat exercitation alamco laboris nisiat aliquip exia commodo consequit. Do sortire dollar in reprehenderit involutat velit esse silum dolor eu fugiat nullo pirata. Excepture sunt acicat cupiditat non proident. Sunt in culpa quia fiscia deserent molid animae state laborum. A guy getting up on a ladder during Black Friday in order to grab MP3 players from a pallet up in the steel shelves. Backroom of a WM. The ladder was pulled out from under him, and he hung onto the steel with one hand while grabbing and tossing the boxes with the other hand. Complete insanity. I was in an orientation for a new job and there was another girl sitting kind of diagonally from me. Tables were configured in a horse show. She was wearing a silky blouse tucked into a pencil skirt. She looked nice and clearly was trying to make a good impression. The orientation was 8 hours and about midway through. Right before our first break I look over and notice a couple of buttons on her blouse had come undone. It was like one at the top and one in the center, so from where I was sitting you could see under her bra. Clearly because of the loose slick buttonholes and not intentional. Not too bad, so I figure I'll just say something when we take a break. A few minutes later I look over and her entire top is unbuttoned down to where it's tucked into her skirt. Her boobs are completely hanging out and the guy next to her is just so obviously staring at her chest. But not trying to tell her. I'm trying catch her. I make eye contact so I can give her a signal when the instructor calls for a break and says he going to start pulling people to take their ID photos. He pulls her first. Clearly because he too noticed her tits resting on the table and was likely trying to find a subtle way to let her know without embarrassing her or drawing attention. She came back with her shirt buttoned again. I looked over later and noticed her touching the buttons and double checking it was still closed.